The sound of 100 middle schoolers buzzing with end-of-day freedom is usually a happy chaos. But standing in the main office of Northwood Meadows Middle School, all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. It was Principal's Pride Day, a monthly assembly where students were recognized for excellence. The auditorium was packed with beaming parents and fidgeting children. I'm Maya, 34, a freelance data analyst and a single mom. My entire world is my 12-year-old son, Leo. Leo is a brilliant, kind-hearted boy with a mind that understands the complex language of quantum physics but struggles with the unspoken rules of the school cafeteria. He's autistic, and his differences made him a target. From my seat in the third row, I watched Principal Higgins at the podium, her voice oozing with a saccharine sincerity that never quite reached her eyes. She called up the student council, the star athletes, the top scorers on the latest standardized test. Each name was met with applause. Then, she paused for effect. And finally, we have a very special award. The Inclusivity Star. This goes to a student who tries very hard to fit in. My breath caught in my throat. I knew what was coming before she said the name. Leo Garcia. A smattering of polite, confused applause rippled through the room. Leo, sitting with his class, flinched. He didn't stand up. His aide gently nudged him, and he slowly walked to the stage, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on the floor. He wasn't wearing the proud smile of the other students, he was wearing the mask of sheer, overwhelming panic. Principal Higgins handed him a crudely cut, glitter-covered paper star pinned to a piece of cardboard. For always reminding us to be kind to everyone, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. It wasn't an award. It was a public branding. It was the school equivalent of patting him on the head and saying, "Good for you for trying." The humiliation was a physical force, and I saw Leo shrink under its weight. The other kids snickered. A boy in the front row, Jake Thompson, the ringleader of Leo's tormentors, mouthed the word "weirdo" to his friend. My hands clenched into fists in my lap. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to storm the stage, to grab my son, and to scream at the injustice. But I didn't. I sat perfectly still, my face a calm, unreadable mask. I watched Leo stumble off the stage and shove the award into his backpack, his ears bright red. As the assembly dismissed, Principal Higgins caught my eye. She gave me a small, smug smile, as if expecting my gratitude for her compassion. I met her gaze, and I gave her a slow, deliberate nod. It wasn't a nod of thanks. It was an acknowledgement. A promise. She had just declared war on my son's dignity, and I was about to show her that this quiet, analytical mother was the most formidable opponent she would ever face. The ride home was silent. Leo stared out the window, the paper star crumpled in his fist. "Leo, sweetheart," I began, my voice soft. That was not okay. What she did was wrong. He didn't look at me. "Jake and his friends put my headphones in the toilet today," he whispered. "The noise-canceling ones. They said it was funny to watch me get upset." My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. "Did you tell a teacher? Ms. Evans?" Ms. Evans was his homeroom teacher, the one person who seemed to genuinely care. "I did. She said she'd talk to Principal Higgins." But at recess, Principal Higgins pulled me aside. She said I needed to develop a thicker skin and stop provoking the other boys by being so sensitive. His voice broke. She said the Inclusivity Star would help them see me in a better light. The betrayal was a two-headed monster. There were the children, the bullies like Jake, whose cruelty was a raw, unrefined thing. And then there was the adult, the person in charge, whose betrayal was far more insidious. She wasn't just allowing the bullying, she was enabling it. She was gaslighting my son, blaming the victim, and using a facade of inclusivity to cover her own neglect. That night, I went through Leo's backpack, something I hadn't done since he was little. I found the shredded remains of his favorite book on astrophysics. I found a note that said, "Nobody wants you here, retard." But most damningly, I found his school-issued iPad. When I opened it, I saw the screen was locked. A message popped up, "Disabled. Try again in 1,000,000 minutes." Leo, standing in the doorway, hugged himself. Jake took it during computer lab and put in the wrong password over and over until it broke. He said it was a joke. A joke. My son's access to his learning tools, his communication device, was a joke to them. And the principal's response was to give him a glittery star. I pulled Leo into a tight hug. "This stops now," I whispered into his hair. "I promise you. It all stops now." My revenge would not be a shout. It would be a silent, surgical strike. My skills as a data analyst weren't just about reading spreadsheets, they were about finding patterns, correlating data points, and uncovering the truth hidden in plain sight. I started a digital dossier. I documented everything. I took photos of the destroyed book, the hateful note, the disabled iPad. I recorded dates, times, and witnesses for every incident Leo could remember. I emailed Principal Higgins and Ms. Evans, framing my concerns politely but firmly. "Dear Principal Higgins, following up on our conversation about the incident with Leo's headphones, could you outline the specific disciplinary steps taken against the students involved?" Her responses were masterpieces of bureaucratic evasion. "We encourage the boys to work out their differences. We're fostering a culture of mutual understanding. The matter has been addressed internally. Never any specifics. Never any consequences for the bullies." I knew I needed more. I needed systemic proof. I filed a Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, request with the school district for all bullying incident reports for Northwood Meadows over the past 5 years, specifically those related to students with IEPs, individualized education programs. I filed another for the school's disciplinary records and budget allocations for special education. While I waited, I became a ghost in the school's digital halls. I cross-referenced public social media posts from Jake and his friends. They were careless. A video posted to a semi-private account, laughing as they mimicked Leo's stimmying. A comment, "LOL, Higgins said she'd talk to us but my dad donated the new scoreboard so we're good." The final, crucial piece came from a conversation with Ms. Evans. I requested a private meeting under the guise of discussing Leo's curriculum. In her classroom after hours, her shoulders slumped with a weight I recognized. "I'm trying, Maya, I really am," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But my hands are tied. Higgins has a directive. She calls them VIP students. Their parents are big donors, or on the school board. Incidents involving them are to be minimally documented." "Minimally documented?" I asked. "She tells us to handle it informally. No paper trail. She says formal reports make the school look bad and hurt property values." Ms. Evans looked terrified, as if she'd said too much. "Please, you didn't hear this from me." I had my smoking gun. It wasn't just negligence, it was a deliberate, systemic cover-up to protect the school's reputation and cater to wealthy, connected parents. The symbolic gesture was a simple manila folder on my desk. Inside it, I began to assemble the story, not an emotional plea, but a data-driven indictment. Charts comparing the district's official anti-bullying policy to the reality of the informal resolutions. A timeline of my emails and Higgins's non-responses. It was all there. The folder was my weapon, and it was almost ready to be unleashed. My power move was quiet and precise. I didn't go to the school board. I went higher. I requested a meeting with the superintendent of the school district, Dr. Alicia Reynolds. The meeting was in a sterile, formal conference room. Dr. Reynolds, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened patiently as I laid out my initial concerns. A junior administrator from her office took notes. I understand your frustration, Ms. Garcia, Dr. Reynolds said. Bullying is a complex issue, and we have robust policies in place. I'm sure you do, I replied calmly. I slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. It was a summary chart from my dossier. It showed a clear, undeniable statistical anomaly. Northwood Meadows reported 90% fewer bullying incidents than the district average, yet my FOIA request revealed a disproportionately high number of parent complaints and student transfers from that same school, specifically citing bullying. Dr. Reynolds's eyebrows lifted slightly as she studied the data. The junior administrator stopped typing. This is a significant discrepancy, Dr. Reynolds said slowly. It is, I agreed. And I believe the root cause is a leadership issue at Northwood Meadows that encourages underreporting. I have the full data set, including recorded communications and witness testimony, ready for a formal review. I'm also prepared to take it to the local news, as I'm certain other parents in the district would find this data very revealing about the safety of their own children. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make threats. I presented facts. I gave her a choice: handle this internally and correctly, or I would handle it externally and publicly. The power had shifted. I was no longer a pleading mother, I was a credible threat to the entire district's reputation. Dr. Reynolds looked from the chart to my calm, resolute face. Leave this with me, Ms. Garcia. You have my word. This will be looked into immediately. The confrontation happened a week later. Principal Higgins summoned me to her office. She was not smiling now. Her face was pale and pinched. Maya, she began, trying and failing to sound authoritative. I don't know what you think you're doing, but these baseless accusations have to stop. You're creating a hostile environment. I'm not creating it, Principal Higgins, I said, taking a seat without being asked. I'm documenting it. And the accusations are far from baseless. They're supported by your own district's data. Her mask of composure cracked. You have no right to those records. That is a violation of... Of what? I interrupted. The FOIA Act is public law. I have every right. Just as every student has a right to an education free from harassment, a right you have systematically violated. She cycled through emotions rapidly. Anger. How dare you speak to me this way? I am the principal of this school. Manipulation. Think of the damage you're doing to the school's community. To Leo's place in it. And finally, begging. Maya, please. My career. I was only doing what I thought was best for the school's image. We can fix this. We can get Leo into a better homeroom, we can. It's too late for that, I said, my voice cold and final. The superintendent has launched a full-scale audit of your administrative practices. They're interviewing every teacher. They're reviewing every informal resolution. They know about the VIP student policy. The blood drained from her face. She looked like a puppet with its strings cut. She realized, in that moment, that I hadn't just complained. I had built an airtight case. I had gone over her head, armed not with emotion, but with irrefutable evidence of her professional incompetence and ethical failure. You've been steps ahead this whole time, she whispered, her voice hollow. From the moment you gave my son that pathetic paper star, I confirmed. You thought you were dealing with an emotional mother. You were dealing with an analyst. And you're not just losing your job, Principal Higgins. You're losing your reputation. The same thing you tried to protect by sacrificing my son. The fallout was swift and public. Dr. Reynolds acted decisively. Principal Higgins was placed on administrative leave, a polite term for being fired pending a final review. A letter was sent to every parent in the district outlining the findings of the audit, a systemic failure to follow anti-bullying protocols and a culture of intimidation that suppressed incident reporting. The reaction from other parents was overwhelming. My phone blew up with messages, not of anger, but of gratitude. Dozens of other families came forward with similar stories. Their children had been bullied, their complaints dismissed by Higgins. I had given them a voice. We formed a parent coalition to work with the district on implementing real, enforceable anti-bullying reforms. The most important moment came with Leo. Jake Thompson's parents, facing the potential for their own son's suspension and the very public collapse of their protected status, forced Jake to apologize to Leo. It was a stiff, uncomfortable meeting in the new interim principal's office. But when it was over, Leo looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw a light in his eyes. "That wasn't so bad," he said quietly on the way home. He looked scared. "He was, honey," I said. Because for the first time, there were real consequences. That night, I sat with Leo on the couch. "Why did you do all that, Mom?" he asked. "You were so quiet." I was quiet, Leo, because anger is loud and messy. It can be dismissed. Data is quiet. The truth is quiet. And when you have it, you don't need to shout. You just have to present it, and it speaks for itself. I stayed silent because I was gathering the words that would matter most. Principal Higgins's world unraveled completely. The school board voted unanimously to terminate her contract for cause. The local news ran a story, not naming victims, but detailing the administrative failures at Northwood Meadows. Her teaching license was suspended pending an ethics review. The VIP parents who had once protected her now distanced themselves, furious that the scandal had touched their community. She became a pariah, a cautionary tale in educational circles about what happens when a leader prioritizes optics over the well-being of children. The very reputation she had worked so hard to protect was utterly destroyed by the truth she tried to hide. As for Jake and his friends, with Higgins's protection gone, they faced actual, documented suspensions and were required to attend mandatory anti-bullying and empathy counseling. The culture of impunity was broken. We didn't just get an apology, we got a transformation. The new principal implemented a strict, transparent anti-bullying policy with a zero-tolerance clause for retaliation against reporters. Teachers like Ms. Evans felt empowered to speak up. Leo began to thrive. The constant anxiety lifted. He made a few friends who shared his love of sci-fi and coding. He even started a small after-school club for board games, a safe space for other kids who felt a little different. I didn't stop there. I used the skills I'd honed during my crusade to start a small nonprofit consultancy, helping other parents of children with special needs navigate the complexities of the school system and advocate effectively for their rights. My quiet analysis became a tool for empowerment. The poetic justice was perfect. Principal Higgins was brought down not by a screaming match, but by the very thing she neglected: the data, the facts, the cold, hard truth. The system she manipulated to hide her failures became the weapon that exposed them. They say not to make enemies with someone who knows how to hold a grudge. But you should really never make an enemy of a mother who knows how to read a spreadsheet. Because while you're busy covering up the problem, she's already building the solution. If you believed in Leo's story and the power of a quiet revenge, make sure to comment and subscribe for more tales of those who fought back with their minds, not their fists.